I never believed the old stories about our family cabin. Not until that weekend when I found myself alone with my father for the first time in years. The drive up was tense. Mom had finally left him after 20 years, and I'd agreed to this trip only because he sounded so broken on the phone. "Just one weekend, Michael, for old time's sake." We arrived after dark. The headlights swept across the weathered porch as Dad killed the engine. The silence that followed was absolute. No crickets, no distant traffic, just an unsettling void of sound that made the hairs on my neck stand up. "Home sweet home," he muttered, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I grabbed my duffel bag and followed him up the creaking steps. The door groaned open, revealing darkness like spilled ink. Dad fumbled for the light switch, but nothing happened. "Power's out," he sighed. "Typical. There are lanterns in the kitchen." I followed the beam of his flashlight through the living room. Everything was exactly as I remembered from my childhood. The worn plaid couch, the stone fireplace, the bookshelf filled with dog-eared paperbacks. Yet something felt wrong. Off-kilter, like walking through a memory that had been subtly altered. "Here." Dad handed me a kerosene lantern. "You remember your old room, right?" I nodded, taking the lantern. Its amber glow barely pushed back the darkness as I made my way down the narrow hallway. The floorboards seemed to sigh under my weight. My old bedroom was smaller than I remembered. The twin bed with its faded quilt, the dresser with chipped blue paint. I set my bag down and sat on the edge of the mattress, listening to the cabin settle around me. Then I heard it, a soft thud from somewhere above, like something heavy being dragged across the attic floor. "Dad!" I called out. No response. I stepped into the hallway. "Dad, are you up in the attic?" "In the kitchen," his voice called back, "making coffee." I glanced up at the ceiling, then followed the smell of brewing coffee to the kitchen. Dad was standing with his back to me, shoulders hunched as he leaned against the counter. "Did you go up to the attic earlier?" I asked. "No one's been in that attic for years," he said, not turning around. "Why?" "I heard something moving up there." He finally turned, offering me a steaming mug. "Old houses make noise, Michael. You know that." I accepted the coffee, noticing how his hands trembled slightly. "You okay?" "Just tired." He forced another smile. "It's been a long day." We sat at the kitchen table, our faces half illuminated by lantern light. Dad kept glancing toward the ceiling, though he pretended not to. We made awkward small talk about my job, his retirement, everything except why Mom had finally left. "Remember how we used to play chess here?" he asked suddenly. I nodded. "You taught me when I was 7. 7, he repeated, his voice distant. "That was a good summer." Thud. We both looked up this time. "Raccoons probably," Dad said quickly. "They get in sometimes." That didn't sound like a raccoon. His knuckles whitened around his mug. "Drop it, Michael." "Dad, I said drop it." He slammed his palm against the table, making me flinch. Immediately, regret washed over his face. "I'm sorry, I'm just tired. Let's get some sleep." I lay awake in my childhood bed, listening. The cabin creaked and settled around me, but the sounds from above had stopped. I must have dozed off eventually because I jerked awake to the sound of crying. A child crying. I sat up, heart hammering. The digital clock on the nightstand read 3:17 a.m. The crying continued, soft, muffled, coming from above me. I grabbed my lantern and crept into the hallway. Dad's door was closed, a thin line of light visible underneath. Was he awake too? The crying stopped abruptly. Then came a new sound, a soft scraping, like fingernails dragging across wood. I found myself at the end of the hallway, staring up at the attic hatch. A thin cord dangled from it, swaying gently, though there was no breeze. "Dad," I called softly. not wanting to wake him if he'd somehow managed to sleep through this. No answer, but the light still glowed under his door. I reached up and pulled the cord. The hatch resisted, then gave way with a groan. A wooden ladder unfolded, inviting me up into blackness. My lantern cast jumping shadows as I climbed, one rung at a time. The attic air was heavy with dust and something else, a sweet, coppery smell that made my stomach clench. "Hello?" I called, lifting my lantern higher. The light revealed stacked boxes, old furniture draped in sheets, the usual attic clutter. But against the far wall stood something else, a small tent, the kind children make from blankets and chairs. My blood turned to ice. I'd never had a tent in the attic. We'd never even come up here when I was a child. As I approached, the tent's entrance fluttered, as if disturbed by someone inside. "Hello?" My voice was barely a whisper now. A small hand appeared at the edge of the tent flap. Pale, dirty fingernails. I stumbled backward, knocking over a box. Photographs spilled across the floor. Dozens of them, all of children, none of them me. Different faces, different eras judging by the clothing, but all boys around 7 years old. Footsteps on the ladder behind me. "You shouldn't be up here, Michael." Dad's voice was eerily calm. I spun around, clutching the lantern like a weapon. "What is this? Who's in that tent?" Dad stepped into the attic, his face half hidden in shadow. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." My voice broke. "Every 7 years, he said slowly, the cabin needs to be fed." "Fed?" He nodded toward the tent. "One child, 7 years of peace in return." The tent flap moved again, more than one small hand this time. 3, 4, reaching out. "This is insane," I whispered. "You're insane." "My father brought me here when I was 7, Dad continued, taking a step toward me. "But he couldn't do it. He loved me too much, so the cabin took him instead." His eyes gleamed in the lantern light. "I brought you here when you were 7 too." Realization hit me like ice water, but I'm still here. He smiled sadly. "I couldn't do it either. I loved you too much, so I found substitutes every 7 years." The tent was moving now, the entire structure shifting as if something larger was waking inside it. "Mom knew," I whispered. "That's why she left." Dad shook his head. "She suspected. That's different. I'm calling the police." "No one will believe you," Dad said calmly. "Besides, we're overdue. The cabin's hungry, Michael. It's been 7 years and 3 months since the last one." I backed toward the ladder. "I'm leaving, now." "You can't." His voice hardened. "If we don't feed it, it takes one of us. That's the rule." The tent collapsed suddenly, revealing not children but a writhing mass of pale limbs and torsos fused together. Faces pressed against each other. Young boys, their eyes wide with terror, and something else. Hunger. I screamed, dropping the lantern. It shattered, flames licking across the wooden floor. "Now look what you've done," Dad said, oddly calm as fire began to spread. "It's angry." The mass of bodies surged forward with impossible speed. I leapt toward the ladder, but Dad grabbed my arm. "I'm sorry, son," he whispered, "but better you than me." He shoved me toward the advancing horror. I fell, scrambling backward as the fire grew around us. The amalgamation of children moaned with one voice, a sound of ancient hunger. Dad turned toward the ladder, but as he reached for it, floorboards cracked beneath him. He screamed as they gave way, sending him crashing through to the hallway below. The fire was everywhere now. Smoke filled my lungs as I crawled toward the hatch, the heat searing my skin. Behind me, the thing made of children wailed as flames engulfed it. Somehow I made it out of the cabin. I staggered into the night, watching as the old structure was consumed by fire, listening to the unholy screams from within, my father's among them. The authorities ruled it an accident. Faulty wiring, they said. They found remains, charred beyond recognition, too many remains. That was 7 years ago. I've been running ever since, moving from place to place, never staying longer than a few months. Because sometimes, in the darkest hours of night, I hear children crying. And lately, I've started to feel hungry. Last week, I found myself driving past an elementary school, slowing down to watch the children at recess. 7-year-olds, laughing, playing, unaware. I've rented a cabin in the woods, remote, private. There's an attic. I think I understand my father now. 7 years. The cycle continues. Would you have survived this? Tell me in the comments and subscribe for more horror.